Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, with another frugal batch of cards you can make for Christmas this year. We're going to start off by making the focal point of our card, which is the Santa Claus face frame. I was going to use a wreath die cut, but I didn't have one, so I decided I would use this frame and just ink it up with green ink. Now, I used to have a wreath die cut, but it was really intricate and I gave it away because I didn't like how fussy it was. So this works out even better. This stamp set, it came with dies. It was by Time Holtz. It was a gift. I'm not sure how old it is, but it's very old because I've had it for a few years. So then I took the inside of my frame that I die cut and I just traced around the faces on this pattern paper, and I was able to get 34 Santa Claus faces out of this, and I was able to make 34 cards. So I thought that was a pretty frugal use of a 25-cent piece of paper. I love using everything up. Don't you just love that when you don't have any leftovers and you end up making a bunch of stuff? I hand cut these out loosely, and there you can see how it fits around the frame. I think it's really cute. And for embellishing, I took this die. I purchased this at Waffle Flower a few months ago. It's just a little mini bow. It wasn't very expensive, and I did a full sheet of red cardstock with this bow. You can fold your cardstock in half and cut a couple at a time. If you have the thinner cardstock, I just used the like 65-pound, the lighter stuff. And then I shaped the bow puff area with the end of a pencil. And then I put a little adhesive down the center bar part, okay? So then you curl the bow into a loop and you hook the tabs together. It's pretty easy. And then you squash it in the middle and then you wrap around that long piece. And I use score tape because it's super strong. You could use a wet glue, but then you got to hold it while it dries. And I was making like, I don't know, I think I made like 50 of these because I had a ton left over. So time was of the essence. I wanted to kind of get them done and not sit around holding glue. Then I stamped this sentiment. This is from an old Stampendous Poinsettia set, and I'll try to link everything down below if I can find it. Sometimes with stamps you can't find the older ones, but I really like this because it had a really vintage looking greeting and a die cut to match, and then it also had a frame for that, so like a matting layer. So I was able to cut the matting layer out of that pretty striped cardstock that I picked up, and I wish I got another sheet of that because I did have to go and use some older paper scraps to get the rest of the mats, but it was all right. I mean, I like to use up stuff when I'm doing Christmas cards. I love clearing up shop at the end of the year, you know what I mean, and really making good use out of the stuff I've had kicking around for a while. So I took some really inexpensive craft card stock. The stuff, you sometimes buy it and you're like, oh, this is lighter than I thought it was, like too lightweight for card bases. Well, I cut those card stocks into quarters and embossed them with this Flourish 3D embossing folder. It's one of the Time Holtz ones. I like it because it can be used all year round for all sorts of different occasions. And then I took some of the metallic gilding wax from Cosmic Shimmer. And you can use like a foam brush and just lightly dust over acrylic paint if you don't have that, just to hit those raised areas and make it look real vintage and pretty. And then I'm just taking half sheets of cardstock and scoring and folding them in half to make my card bases. So I did that so I would have 34 card bases. And I love that because there's no waste when you do a 5.5 by 4.25 card versus a 5 by 7 card where you do end up with some waste. Now, when I'm adhering down embossed panels, I put plenty of adhesive because you don't have as much contact points as you would if it was just a flat panel. So make sure you use plenty of double-sided tape. I'm using my generic ATG gun. I get my refills from Tape Depot. They're way cheaper. They're like $1.25 a roll, which is like a quarter of the price, and they're acid free. And then I'm using hot glue to attach any of the things on top of the embossed panel because there's even fewer contact points on the front side. So you really want to make sure you have a thicker glue that's going to marry those layers of embossing with your stuff, or you're going to end up sending an activity because your card will be in a million pieces when it gets to your recipient, and you don't want to send an activity. Well, maybe you do, but I don't want to send an activity this year. So I layer up with the flat stuff here with double-sided tape, and then when I go to put that on the card, I'll use hot glue just to make sure it's going to stick. And there you can kind of see the placement. I overlapped a little bit. I like overlapping. I think it's pretty. And then I'm using hot glue to attach the bow at the bottom of the frame. You could do it at the top of the frame if you like, but I think that's kind of clusters everything and overlaps and looks nice. And then for embellishments, I'm using one of these big kind of raspberry-like self-adhesive gems on the top corners, and I did give them a little tug to make sure they were stuck good, and they seem to be plenty sticky, so that's good. You could use hot glue if you're not sure if it's going to stick right. I'm sure people will let me know if their embellishments all come up. And then I did a small pearl on either side of the sentiment, and there you have it. I really like the way this came up. I really wanted to use up some of these rhinestones because I'm kind of tired of them. So it's nice to be able to use them up in a pretty card to send for Christmas. I hope you enjoyed this. Please give me a thumbs up if you did. And until next time, happy crafting.